Jeremy Birmingham, our friend from Letterman Row. I don't want to put any pressure on you, Jeremy, but an hour ago we had Ryan Day on. So it's like Ryan Day following Urban Meyer. You have to follow Ryan Day, but I know you're always wildly entertaining and bring the information. So I know you're up to the challenge here as we talk a little Buckeye recruiting, Jeremy.
Yeah, let's consider Ryan the appetizer, and I'll be today's main course. I don't mind. If that's how you guys want to handle it.
Exactly. Well, we were just Stan and I were talking about the possibility that they add one more tonight. What are the chances Ohio State lands this DeJuan Jones kid from Indianapolis?
Very high. I think it's a pretty good chance that the Buckeyes will end up with DeJuan Jones. 6'8", 360-pound offensive lineman who is also a very talented basketball player from Ben Davis High School in Indianapolis. The last, 8, 9, 10 days got kind of tight down the stretch with him in Penn State, but ultimately Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson really did a great job in the last handful of months building out that relationship, and I fully expect him to end up committing to and signing with Ohio State today.
I read your stuff when the Doug Nestor stuff was breaking earlier this week. And you mentioned that even though Ohio State lost out on him, the silver lining is that most people were thinking that he would flip to Penn State. He ends up going to Virginia Tech. But how big of a blow, Jeremy, was that for Ohio State? A kid that was the first kid committed to this class to lose him in the end. And it kind of looked that way. Everybody was a little nervous in December when he decided he wasn't going to enroll early. But I know they worked really hard at trying to keep him. How big of a blow was that for him?
I mean, it's obviously something that the Buckeyes were working very hard to try and prevent. The depth on the offensive line is a major issue and a major concern. And when you talk about a guy that had been committed for 18 months to walk away when really not a lot changed in Columbus other than the fact that Urban Meyer is not the head coach at this point. Everything else that he committed to is still in place. The Buckeyes are still the preeminent program in the Big Ten. They're still Urban Meyer's program is still there. But I think sometimes kids are looking for a way out, and when something like Urban Meyer retiring happens, it gives them that excuse, I guess, that they're looking for. To look around, and I think the early signing period does a good job of helping people identify the fact that if someone doesn't sign in December, they're basically an uncommitted recruit. So I mean, the fact that he's still on Ohio State commitment lists, 6 weeks ago doesn't really matter. The fact that he wasn't going to sign in December and delayed the plan, which was to enroll early and already be on campus with Ohio State, that was a pretty telling sign that things were not going to end well in this recruitment. But yeah, absolutely for the Buckeyes, the fact that he's not going to Penn State, so you don't have to deal with him or play against him in the future is better for the Buckeyes and Buckeye fans. But you definitely don't ever want to lose a kid that's been committed that long and who had really good relationships with different recruits and different players of the program and that kind of stuff.
So they lose Doug Nestor, but they kind of swoop in here in the last month or so and nab Enoch Viamahi from Hawaii. And Coach Day was talking with us a little bit about it. He and Coach Judrow are flying out there and spending a few hours and then flying back and everything. But how significant is it to that late in the process to get in on a kid like that and able to sway him to end up signing today with Ohio State? And how good of a player, Jeremy, is Enoch Viamahi?
Well, I'll reverse engineer this answer. They wouldn't be traveling to Hawaii 24 hours of traveling for a 3-hour visit if they didn't think that he was an NFL potential guy, and they certainly do believe that. Ryan Day, I've talked to him in the past about Viamahi himself, and he thinks he's a guy that's going to play in the NFL. To go out there, and the Buckeyes only offered him a month ago to go out, and this is the first ever Hawaiian player to be on scholarship at Ohio State, so it shows you how rare it is for a kid from that far away to even take a look at the Buckeyes. But for Ryan Day to go out there and find him in a month and to then sway him away from USC, where he had been leaning for 2 years, where all of his best relationships were and still are, is pretty incredible. The Buckeyes had a really unique approach with him, and that started at the Army All-American game with Garrett Wilson and Zach Harris and Harry Miller, 3 players that were on the final 6 candidates for the Army All-American Player or Man of the Year. Those 3 really kind of identified Enoch as a player that they wanted to play with. And then the Buckeyes got him on campus, and Brandon Bowen and Tommy Togiai, these guys ended up really getting to know him and finding out that they had family that was shared. So all of a sudden it became kind of like a hey, this place is where really good people are and family is, and even though it was 4,500 miles away, it became the right choice.
Visiting with Jeremy Birmingham, Letterman Row, signing day. The Buckeyes added one, could add another. Let's go beyond this, though. Coach Day said if they get DeJuan Jones tonight, they're at 85. But we know how they do scholarship gymnastics. We could see some other players, could we not? I mean, for example, this Jonah Jackson, who's a grad transfer from Rutgers. Is Ohio State still on his radar? Could they add somebody like that? Coach Day said he wants, typically likes to have 4 quarterbacks. Could they add something like that? What do you expect we're going to see beyond today with Ohio State in terms of maybe trying to add somebody else or a couple more pieces to next year's roster?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that there will be more attrition from the current program. I think it's obvious that Ryan Day is going to try his best to stay beholden to the 85-man scholarship limit, maybe a little tighter than Urban Meyer did, but they do understand and expect that more players will leave the program. So the number of 85 is important today, but it's not really important until August. So if you can get a guy like Jonah Jackson, the Rutgers transfer, who I think could potentially be a starter for Ohio State at center or guard next year, you do it. And you understand that eventually someone else is going to leave the program because that is just what happens. At quarterback, it'll be more interesting to see because the waiver, the hardship waiver that Justin Fields is applying for and trying to get, if he gets that, there's not going to be a lot of grad transfer quarterbacks that decide to come into Ohio State and knowing that Justin Fields and Matt Baldwin are both there and that they're unlikely to beat them out for a starting job. So if Fields' waiver is denied by some twist of fate, and the Buckeyes don't expect that, but if it is, then all of a sudden you might need to find 2 quarterbacks. So things are going to get interesting, but I don't think it would be a huge surprise as long as Fields is permitted to play this season if the Buckeyes ended up with just the 3 scholarship quarterbacks heading into August.
What is your read on? We just had a caller talking about this first recruiting class for Ryan Day isn't ranked as high as Urban Meyer's ones, but if you look at the average star rating, because it's a smaller class, it's still right up there at the top. What is your read on this first Ryan Day recruiting class? And what he had to do to basically, when the rumors were going about with Coach Meyer, is he going to be back, and then retiring, it felt like his job was, hey, let's keep as many of these guys as we can. And he did a very good job in that. They didn't lose a ton of kids. But what is your read on this class as a whole, the December kids, and also what's been added?
To me, what Ryan Day and this coaching staff and Mark Pantoni and his recruiting staff did in the last 8 weeks is nothing short of remarkable. To keep the players that they kept, to keep players like Harry Miller from going out to Stanford, to keep Garrett Wilson from all the schools that were on him, to keep Cade Stover and to add Tommy Eichenberg away from Michigan, and to do everything that they did in the last 8 weeks is remarkable. And I think that Buckeyes fans do need to understand that this is the smallest class that we've seen at Ohio State at least since 2010. And that's obviously a whole new era. The Jim Tressel world and the Urban Meyer eras are totally different. And overall, the class is small, but there's not a lot of space. And when Ryan Day is saying that, it's not a talking point. That is the truth. They do not have a lot of open guys and open spots on the roster. So, you expect the next year's class to be more in that 25, 26-man range. But for what the Buckeyes needed and what they've accomplished, it's pretty remarkable at this point.
All right, Jeremy, last thing, and there are certain things that make me feel old. And when Ohio State starts getting commitments from kids that are in my daughter's grade, I start to feel old. But earlier over the weekend, Jack Sawyer, the Pinkerton North kid, commits. Obviously a great player locally, but nationally as well. How significant is that? And to get a start already on the 2021 class with a local kid and B, a kid that nationally is rated as high, how significant is that for Ryan Day?
Well, the way I would try to tell people to look at it is this. If you look at the last 2 recruiting cycles, with Jackson Carman and Zach Harrison in 2018 and 2019, respectively, there is nothing that's guaranteed anymore in recruiting. A kid being from Ohio doesn't guarantee that he's coming to Ohio State. There is always another school. There are always great schools across the country. There's Clemson. There's Bama. There's tons of places around the country these kids could choose to go to school. And Jack Sawyer at 6'5", 235 pounds, and running a 4.6, and as a 15-year-old, as the third ranked player in the country in his class. For him to say, I'm ready to do this now, I'm ready to lead this class, as opposed to playing the game and going through the recruiting march, so to speak, it is pretty massive for Ohio State, because that 2021 class is going to be Ryan Day's first real full Ryan Day class, and to start with the third ranked player in the country already, it's a pretty massive beginning to that, and I think it could be a truly special group, and especially in the state of Ohio, where they've already offered more players in the class of 2021 than they have in the 2020 class.
All right, Jeremy, you knocked it out of the park, man. Great job. Appreciate it very much.
No problem. Let Coach Day know next time that he can just, I'll just handle it from here.